Alright, so I'm going to be going over the questions on our concept test review. The first question says, write the equation in slope-intercept form if necessary, then sketch the graph of each line. So the reason it says if necessary is because if we look at questions like number 1 and 2, they're already in y equals mx plus b. So the first step of this is already done since it's in slope-intercept form, so then we're just going to go straight to graphing. So since this is in y equals mx plus b, we start at our b, which is our y-intercept. And from here we would go up 4 and over 5, which would take us off the graph. So instead of going up 4 and over 5, I can do negative 4 and negative 5, which is still a negative over negative is a positive. So I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4 down, and 5 back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I would connect my line. Question 2 is similar, except that our slope is negative 3 over 5, so we would go down 3 and over 5 after we plot our b. So I'm going to move on to question 3 and 4. Question 3, we need to get it in y equals mx plus b form. So I'm going to move everything but my y over. So I'm going to add 3, and I'm going to add the 9x. Since the 9x is subtracting. So I'm left with, what is that, 3y equals 9x plus 3. Now I'm going to divide by 3, and I get y equals 3x plus 1. So I plot my y-intercept at 1. And my slope is not just 3, but 3 over 1. So up 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1. And I graph this line. Question 4 is almost in slope-intercept form, where we need to divide by 5. And we get y equals 2/5 x minus 2. So start at your y-intercept of negative 2, go up 2 and over 5. So remember that there's two parts to this question. The first part is to write it in slope-intercept form. There we go. And the second part is to graph it. Make sure you do both parts. For question 5, it says to find the x and the y-intercept. So when I find my x-intercept, I'm going to plug in y to be 0. So I get negative 2x plus 4 times 0 equals 8. Well, 4 times 0 is just 0, and so I need to divide by negative 2. So I get that my x is negative 4, so my x-intercept is the point negative 4, 0. For my y-intercept, I'm going to plug in x to be 0, so I'd get negative 2 times 0 plus 4y equals 8. Now I have negative 2 times 0, which is 0, so I have to divide by 4 in order to get that y equals 2. So my y-intercept is 0, 2. Alright, moving on to question 6. We have standard form, which is 1/3 x plus 4 equals y. So that's not standard form. Standard form should be ax plus by equals c. So get my x on one side, get my y next, and then get my c on the other side. So if I subtract my y, I would have 1/3 x minus y plus 4 equals 0. So I need to move that 4 to the other side. 1/3 x minus y equals negative 4. Now to get this x to not be a fraction, because remember a has to be greater than 1, so this needs to be multiplied by 3 in order to get rid of that denominator. So I have x, not equals x, and then what is that, negative 3y equals negative 12. So this is in standard form. X is not negative, it's greater than 1, and it's in the correct form. Alright, so let's move on and see what questions Okay, for question 7 and 8, it says to solve each equation. So starting with number 7, I know that I need to distribute. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute, and I'm going to get negative 48k plus 24 equals 120. And I'm going to subtract 24 in order to isolate the k. So I get negative 48k equals, what is that? 96. So the negative 48k, I need to divide by negative 48, divide by negative 48, and so I get k equals negative 2. Alright, now number 8, I'm going to distribute, and I get negative 20x plus 24 plus 4 equals negative 10x plus 8. If I combine like terms, I get negative 20x plus 28 equals negative 10x plus 8. So I'm going to move my x's to one side. I'm actually going to move my x's to the other side. So I have 28 equals 10x plus 8, because negative 10x and a positive 20x gives me 10x. Subtract 8. 20 equals 10x, divide by 10, so x equals 2. Alright, for question 9, it says to evaluate the function. So we're given function g, and then it says find g of 2. So what that means is that this is telling me that x equals 2, find y. So if I plug in x to be 2, I get 4 times 2 is 8, minus 5 is 3. So g of 2 equals 3. Alright, for these bottom ones, it says to use that f of x equals 2x minus 3 and g of x equals negative x plus 2 for the following questions. So for number 10, it says f of g of x. So start with f, because this is saying plug function g into f. So f is 2x minus 3, and I'm plugging in the whole function for g, which is negative x plus 2. If I simplify here, I get negative 2x plus 4 minus 3. So negative 2x plus 1. For 11, it says plug function f into function g. So function g is negative x plus 2. And I'm plugging in g. So I'm plugging in f into g. So f is 2x minus 3. So what is that? Negative 2x plus 3 plus 2. So negative 2x plus 5. Now for question 12 and 13, they're similar to 10 and 11, except that you're plugging in a value to the first function and then taking that new value and plugging it into your outer function. So I first need to find what f of 2 is, the inside there. So f of 2 is 2 times x minus 3, and I'm plugging in 2. So 4 minus 3 is 1. So now I'm taking that value and I'm replacing it here and finding g of 1. So negative 1 plus 2 equals 1. For 13, I have a negative 1 that I'm plugging into g, so g of negative 1 equals negative times negative 1 plus 2. So this negative times a negative is a positive, so I get positive 3. Take that value and plug it into f, so f of 3 is 2 times 3 minus 3, so 6 minus 3 is 3. So in both of these examples, when I plugged in the 2 to the f and then I took that value and plugged it into g, I got the same number. That's not always the case, it just happened to be coincidence here. Okay, for number 14, it says use the graph to find the following. So if I'm looking at this graph, it says to find the domain. Well, I remember that my domain is my x values. So I'm looking at my x value and my x value. So it looks like I'm going from -5 all the way to +5. So I have to decide which brackets to use here, and since this is a closed circle, that value is included and I use a bracket. And since this is an open circle, that's going to be a parentheses. For the range, I'm looking at my y values, so I'm looking here and here. So it goes from -4 to 8. And again, since this one down here at -4 is a closed circle, it's a bracket. And the one up here is an open circle, so it's a parentheses. For C, it says f of 1. So if I'm looking at my function here, I go to where x is 1 and I find what y is. So here's where x is 1. What's y's value? 3. And where f is -2, what's y's value? Looks like it's a little off. It should be 0. Alright, 15 says, which of the following is not a function? Well, if we remember, x cannot repeat, or every input can only have one output. So in other words, x can't be a repeating number here. So 1, 3, -2, and 0. Nope, that's a function. -1, -2, -2, and 0. Wait a minute. So there's a repeat here and here. So it looks like B is going to be the answer, but let's check C and D. -1, -5, 3, and 8. That's a function. 1, 2, -2, and 4. That's also a function. So yes, which one is not a function is B. And the last one, tell whether the graph is a function or not. So this would be the vertical line test. So if you can draw a vertical line that touches 2 points, then it is not a function. So I'm drawing vertical lines on each part of my graph here, and it never touches 2 points. So that means that it is a function. Yes, this is a function. So an example of what wouldn't be a function is if it had an additional point here, or something like that, where you could draw a vertical line and it touches in 2 spots. That would not be a function. But because that's not the case here, we know that this is a function because there was not a point here. Okay. Happy studying.